Oh, thank you for waiting patiently. We've got a very special guest with us today. He's been writing in the industry for over 20 years. He's been writing for MLP for the past 3 years. You may know him for writing Too Many Pinkie Pies and Rarity Takes Manhattan. Please give it up for David Polsky.
Fun. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to this. I can imagine that it's going to be really hard to sit and listen to somebody talk at 4 o'clock after all of 48 hours of ridiculousness that has been happening here. So, but they've asked me to do a presentation, so that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to give you. And here's the title. Fun, and Rebellion MLP, the short, bald guy, underneath this slide, shares his point of view. Just by way of introduction for this thing, I just want to say that, what I'm used to is sort of Q&As, like something conversational. That's something that I'm just more comfortable with, personally. But the Buck staff were very adamant. They really wanted a presentation, so I want to give you one. But I was trying to figure out what I wanted to talk about, and I was having a hard time figuring that out. And then I saw this, and it gave me my cue. So you go ahead and play the...
Thanks, officer. Now that I know not to sing in public, my family won't get targeted by drone strikes.
Twirl nothing, lass.
This has been a public service announcement of the Office of Public Protection.
Hello. What's good? Why? Hey, get it!
Units have spotted a manticore flying down Princess Street. All flying units in the area respond.
Hey, look! I think somebody's got a Game Boy.
Where? Hey, she's over in truck here!
Why do they always think that works? I mean, come on.
Hey, watch it! Ah! Yes, sir!
Alert! Fugitive in food court. Commencing lockdown.
Whoa!
That was City File, and up next is the news at 6, while over on EBC2 is not...
Sir, can you step off the train and keep your hooves so we can see them?
Public service announcement from the Office of Public Protection.
Have you been hazed on your way to work? Do you have bad breath?
Situation is all security units respond immediately!
What?
Video games have been shown to cause symptoms of various...
Reports have been coming in of youths vandalizing property, causing noisy disturbances, and troubling law enforcement officials. The public is urged to keep a safe distance, make no effort to engage them, and most importantly, not to listen to...
Someone's having doubts, huh? We're just trying to make things interesting. You can try to write us off like that all you want. But at the end of the day, you're just a voice, pal. You don't know a damn thing.
Hey!
Good evening. We interrupt your regularly scheduled mediocrity for some breaking news. Rumors of the death of Fun have been greatly exaggerated. I, Britannia, and my crack team of subversives, including Dave Polsky, GM Barrow, Heather Breckle, and more, have been hard at work cultivating the lost arts of free and original thought away from the prying eyes of Big Brother. Come to Manchester Central on August the 22nd and we'll dance until the break of day. And on August the 23rd and 24th, partake of our buffet of the creative spectrum with delights of the visual, musical, and literary arts. If you're brave enough. Ponies! Bonnie freedom, come all ye!
Not bad, right? Is the person who animated that and put that together here right now? Because I haven't met that person, but I want to just say great job. Lovely, lovely job. Right over here. Oh, you're getting them. Okay, they're on their way. We're giving an ovation. But what inspired me about watching this was, first off, the attitude of the whole thing. And just that, the fact that there's that kind of attitude associated with a show that's got pastel ponies and was made ostensibly for little girls. That's fascinating to me. That's like awesome to me. So hence Funfunfun and Rebellion. You know, they seem like they're two different things. So I'm really, you know, and the other thing I want to say about coming at this is that I think a lot of you here are interested in writing. Is that correct? Or how many people here, but just by applause or hands, how many people here are into writing and have questions about that? Okay, so I want to definitely spend some of this time in Q&A about that and just offer you whatever I can around my knowledge. It's still a mystery to me. I've been doing this for a long time, and it's still, writing is a mysterious process. So I can't give you any definitive answers, just my own experience. But one thing that I think is instructive about writing, I think there's a misunderstanding about writing in general. And that misunderstanding is that it's something that it's just the writer's opportunity to do a monologue to the world. And in my experience, that doesn't make for the most interesting writing, with some exceptions. The most interesting writing to me is a conversation. Sort of like either two characters having a conversation or a conversation between two different ideas, and just seeing how that conversation plays out. So, for example, what made me engaged in this presentation was sort of a question. How do these two ideas, rebellion and fun, come together in this show? And I can't tell you I have a definitive answer, but I can share with you the answers that I've sort of come up with. But first off, I wanted to, let's play this next slide, next video, very short, but I think it's sort of like the question I want to answer, which is this.
Okay, one moment, I need to find this video. In the meantime, Captain Horse did the animation, he's right down there.
Oh, there we go. Here's the man who did the animation, ladies and gentlemen. Nicely done.
Hello, I wasn't expecting this at all.
Surprise! Nicely done, thank you.
I can't even. Yes, thank you.
Okay, well, this is from the Brony documentary, and we'll come back to her when we can. But let's go to the next slide. Oh, you're going to try to play it?
No, I can't find it.
That's okay. Let's just go to the next slide. Okay, so I want to ask you, just to sort of round out these ideas, what makes the show, I just want to hear from people, what makes this show fun for you? What exemplifies it being fun, fun, fun? I want to hear from you. Examples of what's fun about the show, or what attracts you to the show about it being fun. Anybody? The characters. What about the characters? Three-dimensional characters. Yeah.
How much it's changed since the 80s?
Okay, very nice. How much it's changed since the 80s. Who else? Yes, back there. What's that? Make fluffy unicorns. Character development. Sorry? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not catching it, but yes? Comedy. Morals. Pop culture references. Oh, funny instruments. Risk-taking. Sorry? Transferable experiences, over here. Chemistry between the characters? Yes? Over here, anybody? Yes? Sorry? Oh, place of community inspired by creativity. Yes? Simplicity. Okay, great. Now, that's beautiful. Now, let's go to the next one. What makes it rebellious? All you Discord fans out there. Yes? Season 4 finale. Apple Jewel. Yes. Oh, okay. Yes. Season 2 finale. Yes. Sorry. Female characters that aren't generic. Beautiful. Sorry? Something about social norms? What's that? Challenges social norms. Yes, back there again. Don't know what that. Did somebody hear that? I couldn't hear it. If I couldn't hear you, if you want to come closer, I maybe. But yes. Wide fan base appeal. But yes. Rebellion by accident. Okay. And one more. The over-the-top action. Okay. All right. So let's go to the next one. Okay. We're going to do a little, so this is going to be my attempt to answer this question about Funfunfun and rebellion, okay? And so, the way I'm going to frame this, because I want it to be a discussion, I don't really have necessarily the answers to this, but this guy, I want this to be here's the other thing that I want, a social norm that I want to challenge, right here, today, right now. And I think it's this idea that we're all creators in this room. I happen to be a writer, I happen to be writing for the show, but one of the things that's really beautiful about this show is that it's actually attracted a whole lot of other people who are interested in creating, and you guys create amongst yourselves. There's a conversation between this creative community and the creative community that actually produces the show that's on television, and by extension, the creative community that puts together the books. Jillian, right there. The creative community that puts together the comic books. Heather, if you're here. So there's all these crisscrossing creative communities that are kind of in conversation around this show because of the phenomenon that you guys have brought to it, just because Hasbro decided to put it on the air. So this is one particular tiny sliver subset of that, which is Dave Polsky as one particular creative person in this big creative enterprise called putting on the My Little Pony show, talking to one particular audience, which happens to be you guys here right now. But I just want to dispel the notion that I'm a creator and you're not. Okay? That's just something we're going to pretend right now for the sake of having this conversation. But it's obviously not the case. I don't necessarily know a whole lot more about this mysterious enterprise called creation than you do. So I know I'm on a pedestal at the moment, but just treat that as a fiction that we're pretending right now. The fact is that we're all trying to figure this out. Are you with me? All right. Okay, so here's a guy that I respect a lot. I'm gonna refer to a German guy, a French guy, and an English guy to sort of set the stage for this conversation. Okay? What? They all walk into a bar. And there's a bar right there. All right, so he had something to say about art criticism. So this is another thing that I want to talk about, is that you can't have creation without an audience. It's sort of like, I'm going to say if the tree falls in the woods and nobody hears it, let's go with the idea that it didn't happen. We need an audience for creation to matter, at least among human beings, right? So, and an audience can be critical, right? An audience can say, I like that, I didn't like that, or that was good, that was bad, right? Being criticized is part of the creative process. I know it's the part that we as sensitive creative people hate a lot of the time, but creation can't exist without it, in my humble opinion. So, he had something to say about what is the proper way to criticize a piece of creation. That's the next slide. 3 questions in this order. 1, what is the artist trying to do? 2, was he or she successful doing it? And then 3, was it worth doing? And a lot of times when we're looking at a piece of work, a lot of, sort of a common error according to Goethe is that we go straight to the was it worth doing question, which is basically, did I like it or did I not like it? And what he's saying is that to evaluate something somebody's created, you really have to think about what they're trying to do and whether they did it well, and then say whether or not it was worth doing. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit, give you a little window about what I, Dave Polsky, one sliver of the creative community, is trying to do, as I best understand it, when I'm writing an episode. Okay, now I'm going to talk about this French guy, Albert Camus, who wrote a book called The Rebellion. Remember we were talking about rebellion? He had a book called The Rebel. So I took a look at that book, and there's this one particular passage that I found really interesting. This is where my talk's going to get a little dense. Can you bear with me for the dense part? All right, it's going to get a little dense, but hopefully it's going to be worthwhile on the other side, and then I promise we'll have a lot more talking, a lot more fun. All right, so he had some stuff to say about rebellion. He talked about moral contradictions. Remember this conversation thing I'm talking about, dealing with contradictory things. He says, as for moral contradictions, they too become soluble in the light of conciliatory value. Don't worry about that. Let's move to the next slide. This sentence blew me away, this first sentence. Virtue cannot separate itself from reality without becoming a principle of evil. Okay, and now what I really mean by evil is suckitude. Can we play that Discord slide? The video we couldn't play before? Damn. Okay, can we flip to the last slide because I have it written down what she says. The very last slide. The very last slide.
We've run for quite a bit.
Yeah, there's not a way to skip to it? Okay, just go to the last slide. Go. Fast. Okay. Yeah, can you just click on the last? Yeah, this is what she said. This is a fan, maybe one of you recognized her, I don't know, but who was in the, Bronies, the Unexpectedly, blah, blah, blah documentary. Anyway, this is what she said, and I loved it. She said, and she was addressed as Discord, she said, today's world of utter chaos needs actual messages of integrity and harmony, and it doesn't have to suck. Right? So I love that she said that. So when Camus is talking about evil, I'm talking about suckitude, like what makes something suck. So let's go back to what Camus had to say. Go. Okay, so back to the previous slide. Okay, so virtue cannot separate itself from reality without principle. So in other words, I think a lot of times children's shows just present virtue, like morality, like this is how you're supposed to behave, little boys, this is how you're supposed to behave, little girls, and don't necessarily engage with issues that feel real to us. That's what Camus, translated to Discord woman, would say, that's what makes something kind of suck. That there has to be some connection to something real, that something means something to people, right? That it's not just trying to teach a kid something because this is how you be good, right? But how do you wrestle with something that's really happening that people can really relate to, that's what keeps it from suckland, all right? But he also says, skipping down, okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so moderation, which is, this is the irony that he's dealing with, that actually being moderate, staying in between the place between virtue and reality is where rebellion really happens. He says, it teaches us that at least one part of realism is necessary for every ethic. Pure and adulterated virtue is homicidal. So he's saying it's going to make something suck if you're just trying to be good, if you're just trying to say this is how goodness happens. There has to be some complexity in there. At the same time, he's saying the other thing is necessary for all realism, cynicism is homicidal. If you just deal just strictly with how reality is, just like here's what's real, reality is really gritty and dark and people are horrible and blah, 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 If you're into that cynicism, he's saying that also creates suckitude. That you can't go the other way completely. You know, so he's saying that rebellion really exists in this middle place where you're dealing with, I'm trying to say this is what's good in the world, and I'm also trying to deal with the way the world really is. And that creation is a conversation between how we wish things were, how we think should be, and how things really actually are. And so, anyway, that's what I'm trying to do. At least that's what makes this show engaging for me, is because I feel like I have a bit of an opportunity to do that. So let's go on. Go, go, go. Keep going, skip all that. Okay, so then Alfred North Whitehead, British guy, supposedly said the following. Next slide. The mark of mature intelligence is that we can hold in mind two opposing thoughts without undermining either one of them. Making a show fun and making a show rebellious. That it's possible to somehow hold those two places. Okay, so let's go on. Okay, so now number 2. Move on. Well, now this is when I throw it open to you guys. I just wanted to frame that, philosophically speaking, that's what I feel like I have an opportunity to do on this show. But now I have questions for you. Who here identifies more with the rebellious part of the show? Who here more identifies with the fun part of the show? Okay, will you totally indulge me and move? Rebellion over here, fun over here. Get up. Do 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 do. All right. Okay, one thing that strikes me is how incredibly, like, it's almost 50-50. Do you see this? It's kind of amazing. And yet, we're all in the same room. You know, that sometimes there's, I go online sometimes, I sometimes see the conversations that happen in this community about the show, and that sometimes people are kind of more like, sort of like, I loved it. And some other people are like, you know. You know what I'm talking about, these two different voices online? So sometimes it seems like it's a fight, right? But yet, look at this. We're all here. We're all together in the same space. This is a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing that these two different attitudes can coexist so well, in my opinion. Do you guys agree that you guys coexist pretty well? Then I would give you, let's give this one. So it's a beautiful thing. So now, now I kind of want to throw it open to questions, just like it doesn't have to be about what I talked about. I just sort of wanted to create a frame around the conversation. So, but you guys can ask me anything. So this is kind of the Q&A part of it. And so you guys are now, I invite you to ask me questions related to Goethe's question number 2. Was he or she successful doing it? You know, you might have questions about episodes that I wrote that you might be like, I don't know about that. I don't know about question number 2 if you were very successful at doing that, or anything that you might have a grievance about an episode that I wrote. I'd be open to questions like that. And question number 3, was it worth doing? Are there episodes that you liked, episode that you didn't? What didn't you? And then also just generally how to be a writer questions. I'm open to that too.
Which of your episodes are you the most pleased with?
Which am I most pleased with?
Yes.
That's, I have a few. I think I have them, the one I just love the most, I think, is Too Many Pinky Pies. So, but I would say the ones I'm proudest of, I'd say I'm proudest of Rarity Takes Manhattan. With For Whom the Sweetie Belle Toils, a close second. And I know there was quite a bit of controversy around it, but there's a special place in my heart for Equestria Games as well, that Spike episode. And if I had to, I don't want to totally rule out, and I also, another episode that there was some controversy about, but I just love it in terms of exploration of Fluttershy, Keep Calm and Flutter On was also one I'm really proud of as well. So.
Thank you.
In my opinion, season 4 was probably your best season for writing episodes. I'd like to ask if you had like any frame of mind or any particular ideas for the kind of stories you wanted to write for season 4 in particular.
Any particular what? I'm sorry, I missed.
Any particular like ideas or frame of mind you went in for writing season 4 episodes?
Well, that's an excellent question. I wanted to challenge myself to sort of break out of the comedy box a little bit. I wanted to challenge myself to write somewhat more emotional stories and also maybe potentially darker stories. That I wanted to add dimensionality to the voice that I was bringing to the show. And I think I was starting to lean too heavily on being the comedy guy, being the slapstick guy, which I enjoy. And like I said, I still love Too Many Pinky Pies. But so that was the challenge I was bringing to myself. And also, I think what was also exciting was that we had more time. You know, season 3 was a very compressed schedule. It was a shorter, or a smaller order of episodes. And so I think that I was able to be in a, you know, Megan and I have a certain working relationship where it made it possible to really dig into episodes and really take the time it takes to explore an episode from all the different angles and give it that dimensionality. It's hard to do that in a rush. Yeah.
And in my opinion, you succeeded very well. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Hello. I just want to tell you the proper pronunciation of the German guy's name.
Oh, thank you. I said it wrong, didn't I? Goethe?
It wasn't too terribly wrong. It's Goethe.
Goethe.
Yes.
Thank you, Goethe. So that was more of a correction than a question. Goethe. Goethe. So the question was, how the hell could you screw that up so badly? Was that the question? So, Goethe? Goethe. Goethe. Okay, in America, we really just all screw it up. Goethe. Goethe. I hope that's close.
Who is your favorite character to write for and why?
Well, I know this sounds like a cop-out, but I really don't have a favorite to write for. My favorite is an interesting premise which is a question that I don't necessarily know the immediate answer to. How is Rarity going, you know, for example, in Rarity Takes Manhattan, the premise is she goes into Manhattan and her generosity is challenged, is compromised. To me, that's an interesting question. I'm interested in how that character navigates that problem. So, but if I have admit to a bias, I'm a huge Pinkie Pie fan. I have a tremendous affection for Pinkie Pie. I have tremendous affection for Fluttershy. And I think that's where, you know, if I had to pick a favorite among the kids, don't tell them, it would be those two. But as far as the writing goes, I'm down for writing anyone as long as the premise is interesting, as long as the question is an interesting question that we're exploring.
It's good to hear that. Pinkie's my favorite as well.
All right.
Hello.
I really like the goatee saying with you should find what you were trying to do before you or judge it upon that. And from your episode, they really have been about lore and legends from whom for whom the Sweetie Belle tools is well, it's a saying from whom the bell tools, and I really like that about your episodes. How do you come up with such things, like the mirror pool and stuff like that?
So the question is, how do I come up with certain ideas for the episodes that I've worked on, for example, in For Whom the Sweetie Belle Toils, and your question is about the title specifically?
No, the legends and lore of the...
Legends and lore, and like, for example, Luna's participation in that episode.
Yeah.
And then question, and you were also asking about the mirror pool from Too Many Pinkie Pies. And, you know, again, I come back to the fact that it's for example, in Too Many Pinkie Pies, we didn't think of the mirror pool first. We thought of, again, starting with an interesting question, which is, what if, okay, Pinkie Pie's a handful, what if Ponyville was full of 100 Pinkie Pies, 200 Pinkie Pies? What would that be like? To me, that's an interesting question. And so then the work is to try to answer that question and make it as fun and potentially rebellious as possible. So the mirror pool came up as like, well, we have to have a justification. How could she have access to magic that Twilight can't easily undo? What if she knows about a mirror pool, and what if she goes to the mirror pool and she knows the way to talk to the mirror pool that Twilight doesn't necessarily, and it's not necessarily in her magic books or whatever. And so, you know, that as we try to really give a real answer to that question, we come up with these ideas. And so, For Whom the Sweetie Belle Toils, again, the interesting question we started with was, what if one of the CMCs does something really wrong? And it's Luna that comes, and it's sort of what makes it extra interesting to me as a writer is the fact that they're both younger sisters, right?
Yeah.
So that seemed really interesting to explore. And so then we started thinking, well, how is this justified? How does this make sense? How can we make this as real as possible? Given that we're dealing with pastel ponies in a magical universe, how do we make this credible, right? And so answering those questions, then the ideas come. So much of writing is about asking good questions, asking interesting questions that your intuition wants to answer. And then the intuition offers up the answers. And then you end up in conversation, oh, that's a good idea, that's a bad idea. The other thing is that this is a very collaborative process, especially at the premise stage and the outline stage. I'm having conversations with Megan or whoever the story editor is at the very least, if not in a story meeting when we're coming up with story ideas with a group of people. So conversation's a big part of it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hi.
Hi.
I was wondering, if you could write a story about a certain premise, any premise, what would you choose to write about in MLP?
You mean that hasn't been done yet?
Yes.
Well, then I would be, it's an excellent question. It's a question I ask myself. It's also a question I'm not going to answer here because then I can't do it.
Okay. Okay. Can I ask a different question then?
Okay.
From the premises that were done in the show, would you have liked to take one over and done it completely different when it was done in the show itself?
Sorry again? Go ahead, ask the question again.
If you would have to write an episode that was written already, but you did not write, would you have changed it?
Oh, wow, that's a tough question for me to answer right here on the spot. I don't have like an episode that I've seen and that like that I have a ready-baked answer of like, damn, Mitch Larson really screwed that up. I would have done it this way. I don't have. I suppose if I examined it, there's definitely episodes I'm sure that I would have written differently than other people. But in writing, there's something called a lateral move, which is basically you made it different. You didn't necessarily make it worse. You didn't make it better. It's just different. I think I probably would have made some episodes different. Would have I made it? But I cannot claim they would have been better, because they're unmade. It would be an empty claim. I have no way to, there's no way to test it. So, but yes, I'm sure, but I don't have a ready-baked thing for you. I would have to like sit down and watch them and pick it apart. I don't watch other writers' work and pick it apart in that way. So.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Hello, is this working? Yeah. So I have one question for you, and this is all about your personal opinion on this certain thing. When you're basically doing your work on Friendship is Magic, creating an episode and so forth, and when you have these things running around your head, so my question is, do you include in your work about, or in your work, mostly fun things, rebellious things, or a mix of both?
Well, ideally both. I mean, again, these terms fun, and rebellion, I kind of came up with for the purposes of this presentation. It's not something that I've like been spending years. I've got my fun bulletin board and my rebellion bulletin board, and it's not like that at all. However, I think it's an accurate reflection of how I intuitively approach that for me, the fun part and the rebellion part of the show are very intermixed, what makes an episode fun for me to do is that it's a little bit on the edge, that it has a rebellious quality to it. For example, the Daring Do episode that some people hate. Like that, again, I didn't list that as one of my favorite episodes, I should be clear. But even so, that's a good example of like, there's a part of me that thinks this is going to be really fun to kind of do something that's a little rebellious, that sort of pushes the boundaries of what this world is, and yet is still justifiable. So that's a good pocket for me. For example, Too Many Pinkie Pies. This whole idea of cloning didn't exist in this world, so we created it for that episode because it seemed fun to do. So it had this rebellious, boundary-pushing, world-building, world-challenging quality to it that still felt like it was within bounds enough that everybody, not just me, but the story editors, the showrunner, whatever, Hasbro, Hub, all said, boom, let's go. So I like that. I like it when there's a mix. If an episode's too safe, like Twilight Time, to me feels a little safe, isn't as exciting to me. I still like it. I still like that episode, but it's not my sweet spot.
Yeah, although I'm a big fan of Daring Do, I still didn't much like Daring Dawn episode when comparing to Read It and Weep episode, but I'm still a fan of Daring Do, but all I'm saying is that I'm not much of a fan of Daring Dawn, even though it was a high. I still put it on my list of an Hearted episode, which I was. Yeah.
You got it.
Anyway, thank you, Dave.
Sure.
Hi there. My question is more about the Equestria Games arc as a whole. I did like the Spike episode with the whole Equestria Games as the backdrop. Did you want to do more Equestria Games as the backdrop rather than just having it all wrapped up in that one episode? Just wondering.
Well, look, if we had if it was a two-parter, if it was a season ender, I think we would have seen a lot more of the games. We were kind of in a place where, given the constraint we were dealing with, 22 minutes, we kind of had to make a devil's choice, which was, do we want it to be it's a pretend Olympics, where the stakes will be very low. This is the irony, is that what kind of show are we writing is the question we had to ask ourselves. And the truth is, it's a character show. It's not an action show. It's not a sports glory show. If we were doing maybe like a cliche boys show, it would have been all about the games and like who won and blah, 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 what could have been a very good episode for another show. But for this show, it seemed like if we had to choose, and again, it was a devil's choice, we could have made a decent episode there. We wanted to do we felt like the surprising choice, and to some people, surprising in a loathsome way, was to make it a character-based episode. And I think people brought certain expectations to watching that episode, and some of those expectations were frustrated and disappointed. We didn't set out to frustrate and disappoint people, but we were inspired, and I say we because it wasn't a decision I made in solitude. it wasn't even a decision I made, it was just an idea I threw out that the decision was let's do it, is that the surprising and interesting thing would be to do something that frustrated those expectations, even though we would have liked to have satisfied all expectations. But given that we had 22 minutes, we realized we were going to have to frustrate some expectations, and we felt that that episode was more true to what the show really is than doing something that was just a bunch of people flying around circles and running races and blah, 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 and yay, we won, or boo, we lost. It's a very familiar episode. This was the more surprising, inventive choice we felt, and I'm glad we made it, personally.
Okay. When you're in the middle of this thing's out. When you're in the middle of writing the script for an episode, what would you say was the best way to deal with writer's block?
To deal with what?
Writer's block. You know.
Writer's block.
Yeah.
You know, again, I come back. You know, I think writer's block is a very legitimate question. I get asked this a lot. And I think the best way to deal with writer's block is to, if you start worrying about writer's block, guess what becomes bigger and more writer's block? Like, if you give reality to writer's block, it's just going to get more and more real. If you're experiencing writer's block, you're just, I hate the term writer's block because it makes something real that isn't. You're just you're making it's almost like saying, I think the best way to deal with writer's block is to not focus on writer's block, but to focus on writing. And if you're having trouble putting stuff to a page, don't call that writer's block. Call that, how can I make myself more interested? Ask a question. Ask a question of like, what's interesting to me? What did I notice today? What movie do I like or TV show that I like that inspires me? Who do I want to be like? Ask a question. Get curious. If you have writer's block, what it forces, it drives you inward. If your question is, why do I have writer's block? What's wrong with me? Why am I stuck? Those questions take you inward, ever more inward in trying to do a crime-solving detective study on why you have writer's block, and it usually leads nowhere. Better to ask a question that takes you out of yourself, but is a question motivated by your interests. What have I experienced? Who do I care about? What do I love? What do I hate? Ask yourselves those questions. Be curious about everything about you that isn't writer's block. That's the way to beat writer's block.
Right. Oh, good grief. Right. You've been part of projects which, let's just say, aren't kid friendly. How do you feel when writing, say, a pony episode in comparison to, Scary Movie 2, which you were part of?
Thank you. That's a good question. I do get that. How do I feel about? Well, first off, I've evolved as a person. I've evolved as a writer. So I don't. Parody is still fun for me to do, but it's hard to answer that question in a simple way because there's so many things that are different. In Scary Movie 2, I was part of. I was pitching ideas, but I didn't have my own episode, my own section I was writing. I was basically sort of feeding a bigger thing, and just kind of pitching ideas into a bigger process versus something that I had more control of. So that from a process point of view, it's kind of fun to have your own episode that you're writing, even though there's still collaboration involved. But in terms of tone, in terms of writing stuff for kids ostensibly versus scary, it's kind of just apples and oranges. One of the things that I really enjoy that makes My Little Pony special for me is the ability to tell a certain kind of story where it's not. I don't know if this precisely answers your question, but this is kind of my stock answer. Two things happened between me writing, Scary Movie 1. I was involved in the first Scary Movie as well. That's what led to me involved in the second one. two big things happened between those two things. One is that I became a father to more kids. My kids got older. I became more involved as a dad. And the second thing is September 11th happened. And when September 11th happened, it made me realize how much of my comedy up until that point, South Park, Scary Movie 2, was about mocking things and tearing things down, which I still love. That's the rebellion thing, right? But I wanted to be part of something that built something up. I wanted to make a contribution in my writing somehow in some maybe small, tiny way that was building something up. And so several years later, I found myself working on My Little Pony, and sure enough, it became something. You guys are the evidence that obviously not just me, a lot of people, all the people involved in the show have been a catalyst for building something, and you guys have built it. And this is a beautiful thing. And so it touches me to look out at this group of people and realize that my dream is to a certain degree coming true, that my writing is part of building something positive. And so that's something I didn't get. Previously, so I hope that sort of answers your question.
Hello. 2 points. First off, I actually quite like Twilight Time, as I'm sure many of others here did as well. Secondly...
Thank you.
All right, shush. And my question is, has there ever been a premise or a joke or a scene or anything you've written or come up with that didn't make it into the show but you really wish did?
Well, no. You know, I have felt that. I have felt that. But it's not because, it's only because, again, the 22-minute thing. There are certain episodes that I wish could have been longer, that I wrote longer, where stuff got cut out. And it's not because they were necessarily golden, brilliant moments, but they helped. You know, sometimes people say, I don't understand the pacing of this episode. And that sometimes the way it was paced in the writing is different than how it paces when it shows on the air, because I don't know where the 22 minutes is going to stop and start necessarily. I've got a page limit that I work within, but even within that page limit, things vary, things play at different rates and so forth. And so the pacing sometimes I mean, I have a lot of responsibility for the pacing in terms of how I write it, but ultimately, the pacing is decided by the director. That based on what I've given him to work with. So I'm not trying to pass the buck. I'm simply saying that he's going to cut it in such a way that I might not have cut it. But he might. The directors are brilliant, by the way, and are fantastic. So I'm just simply saying that sometimes I wish we had 24 minutes. You know.
When you're writing an episode, for example, Rarity Takes Manhattan, and there's a song in it. Do you have any control over how long it is or what the lyrics are at all?
I do, in the sense that I write something. I write lyrics and I propose like a style for the music. But generally it gets redone. In Over a Barrel, I didn't write the music, but the lyrics were the same. In Rarity Takes Manhattan, there were shreds of lyrics that were kept, but it was basically a total redo, and the style of the song was very different than what I proposed. And Daniel Ingram, you know, he knows a hell of a lot more of the music than I do. But I'll make a proposal, and he'll basically make, I think, the decisions about what to do about the song generally are made out of my hands. Also, can I ask, when people ask a question, can you stay here for the answer? Because I feel like it helps me to be talking to the person who asked. Okay, go ahead.
Hello. I know this is quite possibly maybe a question that doesn't have an answer or maybe not allowed to give out an answer, but I think a lot of the fandom enjoy the idea and like the character Star Swirl the Bearded. And maybe quite possibly because there's so little information about him that maybe it makes him mysterious and draws us into him. But what I want to know is, are there any plans to do maybe an episode about him, maybe explaining a little bit about his background, or like, is that always going to stay just something that's not discussed or brought out in an episode?
Well, I can't. I don't know exactly which episode you're thinking of, but I haven't ever written Star Wars World is Bearded in any of the episodes that I've done. So I can't speak to that. As far as, you can maybe ask that gentleman there. I don't know, he might know. But as far as, I think that it's on the table to explore that character further. Whether that's, I don't know to what degree that's been done for season 5. I don't know to what degree that's, I'm not in the Star Wars World of Bearded conversation, really at any beginning, middle, or end part of it. But I can say theoretically, I don't think I've ever heard, we are not going to explore that guy. You know, it's on the table just like everything else.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Hey.
Hi.
My question is briefly, the internet's changed the relationship between writers and the audience in the way that's totally different. And I was wondering, as a writer yourself, the way you now have massive feedback from the audience directly and so forth, and can actually follow subversely within forums and so forth, how has the internet transformed your role as a writer in terms of that interplay between the audience and the writers that didn't exist before?
Well, I mean, so everybody heard the question about the internet is totally transforming the entertainment industry, period. For me, my own personal experience with it is really kind of on two levels. One is certainly being here. There wouldn't be any here for me to bid to if it wasn't for the internet. There wouldn't be this, right? So that's a huge thing to start with. I mean, it's not like fandoms didn't exist prior to the internet. Certainly Star Trek, on and on and on, you could go. But I'm not sure this particular fandom would exist because of the 4chan connection and so forth and so on. It kind of, right? I mean, it started out as this ironic thing, and everybody was like, wait, but we really mean this, and like, it really was born out of the internet, no question. In fact, I wonder if this is the first, I'm sort of wondering, is this the first full-blown fandom that was conceived on the internet? I wonder. I hadn't really thought about that. But be that as it may, as far as me as an individual writer, I go online, I'm not going to lie, I check, I see what people say. I've learned to do it less. But what's been interesting is that I write comedy largely. I still identify myself primarily as a comedy writer. And that's where what attracts me the most. And, but I've never been a stand-up comic. You know, and there's something amazing about being a stand-up comic, or even an improv comic, where you get that immediate feedback from the audience, right? Well, the internet has changed that because my episode goes on, and guess what? I get immediate feedback. So that's new, and I got to tell you, it's awesome. Even though it comes with negativity sometimes, sometimes very justified negativity, sometimes very unjustified negativity. Either way, the whole experience of getting an immediate response, like an audience, to something that has aired that I wrote a year ago, and all kinds of other people put their hands on, and so forth and so on, and then to just see it debut like a Broadway play and get the audience reaction, it's fantastic. It's such a great learning tool for a writer, because then you're not just writing to what your boss is like or what's fashionable in the industry at the time. You're writing to what the fans care about, and that's really liberating, because there's so many in the entertainment industry, there's so many weird games that start to happen where it's like, who knows what people like, who doesn't, blah, 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 and that's all getting stripped away. The fans get to speak about what they like. That you can't hide from that anymore. You can't make it up or spin it as easily as you used to, and that's actually really liberating, because then you're starting to deal with reality as opposed to everybody's interpretation of the reality and who speaks the loudest and who has the best connections. So I love it. I love it.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
How much of your work is the pure product of spontaneity?
Sorry?
How much of your work is the pure product of spontaneity?
How much of my work is a pure product of spontaneity? Hard to say. I mean, it's, you know, anytime you get an idea, there's any really worthwhile idea, there's some spontaneity in it. Whether it be like a piece of dialogue or, so there's always but it's often a product of a lot of reflection. Like I talked about, asking questions, you know, picking things apart, blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, aha, we could do this. Aha, say a mirror pool or whatever. Like that aha isn't a spontaneous experience. But it could be after a prolonged beating your head against the table process that doesn't feel spontaneous, but that actually feels grueling and discouraging. So, but it's a constant yin and yang there. So spontaneity is hopefully throughout. You know, and because, again, we talked about it being a conversation. When people are writing as a monologue, think of writing as a monologue, then that's sometimes where spontaneity kind of gets lost. It's like the person has an agenda and they're just trying to write their agenda. And it's like it's sort of like that first, this is what I want to tell the world, this is what I want the world to get, blah, 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 blah. And some of that stuff can be really good if you're really brilliant, but a lot of times spontaneity gets stripped out of it. So I'm hopeful that that the process that I'm more attracted to, this conversational process, creates those gaps where spontaneity can come in, even after a bunch of grueling reflection.
Yes, I believe it really shows in your comedy work. The other question I had was, have you ever wanted to write an episode without an ending, an answer or a lesson?
Have you ever wanted to write one with a lesson?
Well, no, without
a lesson.
Without a lesson, yeah.
I prefer to write them. I mean, my natural instinct is to have the lesson not be spoken, but be implicit. That's my stylistic preference. So you'll notice that, like at the end of Whom the Sweetie Belle Tolls, there really isn't a specific lesson vocalized, but you see what happens between the characters, between Sweetie Belle and Rarity at the end. Stylistically, I prefer that. However, I think there's something really cool about having to tell a lesson, because it makes you really have to think about what that lesson is, think carefully about it and precisely about it. I think that's healthy for good writing.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hi. My question is simple. It's how exactly did you get into the writing business?
How did I get into the writing business? It's a kind of a weird story. Well, let me answer that. How are we doing on time? I see there's a lot of people left who want to go. We have 15 minutes. Okay. So the short version is I actually had a very charmed entrance into the business. I did a lot of stuff in college. I was kind of well known for comedy. I was involved in a comedy troupe. I started an improvisational comedy troupe that's still going there. Co-started it with a friend of mine. And then I left college and started working for an investment bank in New York City. And but I was taking acting classes on the side and writing classes, but my focus on writing was poetry. And then I got burnt out on that, burnt out on investment banking, and then I became a social worker, and then we moved to Maine, and then I got burnt out on social working, and then I was doing telephone sales, but I kept writing poetry, and I got published, but the comedy thing had kind of dropped away. Then one of my college roommate for 3 years had broken into the business during this time. And then he called me from Los Angeles and said, how'd you like to write on a TV show that I got the head writing job on? Submit your stuff. If the producers like it, I could maybe get you to freelance from 3,100 miles away. And that show was Singled Out. I don't know if you remember this game show that launched Jenny McCarthy's career, and Chris Hardwick was on it. Anyway, it was on MTV. And I ended up freelancing for that show, and they liked it, and they gave me a job, and I moved out, and then I moved my wife and kid out, and we sold the house, and blah, blah, blah. So it was a very unusual entrance to the business. But that got me started, but then I kind of had to make it work. My wife and kid came out, we sold the house. It really had to work beyond that one show. So.
Thanks. Hello.
Hi.
So in season 4 you wrote The Return of the Hindu, an episode with Rarity in it since the last one was released 2 years ago. The Return of Princess Luna, one focused on Princess Twilight, and the conclusion of the Equestria Games. these were very heavy episodes that the fandom was looking forward to. Did you ever feel any pressure coming from the fandom or like anyone in general when you were writing them?
Any pressure? What was the last part? Any pressure? What?
Any pressure from the fandom or from anyone in particular, because these episodes were a very big deal before they were released.
Well, I certainly felt a responsibility, you know, that to do them well, and but you know, I don't know why, but as a writer, I kind of like challenges. I mean, I sort of am attracted to the more challenging the idea is, the more attractive it is to me. The higher the stakes with the fandom, the more attractive it is to me, and then I take my lumps, you know, for how it goes. But that gets my creative juices going. I kind of embrace it.
That's great. As an addendum, I thought your work in season 4 was excellent.
Oh, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Again, heading back to you work on Scary Movie in South Park, do you still have that feeling that you want to go on and do more adult shows? You know, you don't want to stay with MLB the entire time.
I do. I mean, there's something that really attracts me about comedy that speaks to an adult audience. That said, a lot of, you know, it would have to be I'd still have to have the opportunity to do the kind of storytelling that I like to do, which is somewhat affirming, I think. And it's challenging. It's challenging to do something that's both affirming and satirical. Or, so I don't want to, so yes, the short answer is yes, that's appealing to me, but then it has to be the right, it has to fit that affirming part of me that I've cultivated all these years since that time. And so that's a journey. I'm just on another journey, finding where the right places are for that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
Hello, Dave.
Hi.
I'd like to ask how you feel your writing has changed over the 4 years that you've been working on the show.
What, I'm sorry?
How you feel your writing has changed over the 4 years you've done the show.
Since I've been on the show, how my writing has changed. Well, kind of a little bit like I was said with that, you know, I think I've allowed myself to tell more complex stories, more emotional stories, I think I've grown in my capacity to do that, that's been very satisfying. And so, because comedy is still the main thing that's attractive to me, but it's given a lot. I feel like I'm growing in my ability to still tell a story that has comedic elements, but has action also, has heart also, and where it also fits together. You know, and I find it. So that's the main thing, and this show's given me an great opportunity to develop my ability in that.
Thank you very much.
First off, Ms. Polsky, I'd like to say that I and many other people around me would agree you are one of the funniest writers on the show, if not the funniest.
Thank you. Thank you.
And from that, I would like to ask that when you write your scripts, do you have a specific way you communicate your comedic timing through like visual and verbal gags?
A specific way I
communicate like timing, because time is the most important part of the joke, isn't it?
Timing and the last part?
Just comedic timing.
Yes, a certain way I develop the comedic timing.
In your scripts.
In the scripts. Well, it's not something, I guess I probably do, it's not something that it's really a feel thing. You know, it's kind of, I don't have a great, you know, I've talked a lot about asking questions and analysis and being, you know, coming up with ideas and so forth. But when it actually gets down to where the rubber really hits the road and you're writing dialogue, developing, you know, comedic action sequences, at that point, kind of instinct sort of has to take over for me. That I don't have like a method. Like at that point, it's just like, does this work? Does this thing feel like it works? It's sort of like a joke. The way you know a joke works is by testing it out. And then I saw maybe say things to myself or say things to myself in my head or picture it, visualize what the sequence as I'm writing it would look like on a TV screen once it was all animated, and then kind of saying, does this look right the way I imagine it appearing on TV? Does this sound right the way I imagine it coming out of people's mouths? So I guess that would be my method, is that I kind of try to sort of conjure the finished product in my head and then watch it as an audience or listen to it as an audience kind of and pretend, and then say this is, and if it feels right, great. If not, then I change it.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
You're awesome.
Thank you.
Hi Dave, can you hear me all right? A great fan of your all the episodes that you've written.
Thank you.
And it developed. So you've got some of the episodes like Feeling Pinky, Too Many Pinkie Pies that I really love. But for one of the more controversial ones, the early ones, with Feeling Pinky Keen, don't want to be aggressive, or so it's what was the artist trying to do? Sometimes I can think about it, but it's one that sort of I want to find out what the aim of the episode was for.
Kind of what?
The aim for Feeling Pinky Keen?
Yeah.
Because I know sometimes that gets a bit of flack or cause a bit of diversion sometimes within the fan community.
Yes, Feeling Pinky Keen. Well, first off, remember that was a show that was written before the show had ever aired. So we didn't really know that we were, that said, the aim was, Lauren Faust had this wonderful idea of Pinky Sense. The question was how to write a story where Pinky Sense possibly made sense. Yeah. And so my intention was to give that idea, have it play out as a narrative in some way because that was kind of my job. The intention, I can tell you the intention was not to do anything about religion.
Yeah.
That was not the intention at all. However, it was an exploration of faith. And now, I would say that, and I don't mean faith in any religious sense. I mean the kind of faith where you walk into this building having faith it's not going to fall down on you. Right? Yeah. We exercise faith all the time, so much so that we're not even aware of it. I have faith that I'm going to be up here and none of you are going to shoot me. That may be a misguided faith, but it's a faith nonetheless. Otherwise, I wouldn't be up here, right? Because I'm not, this convention isn't worth that for me. So faith is always operational. It's not an inherently religious thing. It's been appropriated by religion for various reasons, and we can debate that till the end of time. But it's not inherently religious. So the question was, to explore this idea of Pinky Sense, well, Pinky has this ability. Well, wouldn't it be interesting if Twilight, her ability didn't make sense to Twilight? That would make a conflict, an interesting conflict. And it's credible that Twilight, who can be a little bit literal, she's bookish, right? So she might say, well, this is impossible. There's no, my knowledge of magic, this does not make sense within my knowledge of magic, Pinky Sense. Where Twilight makes a wrong turn is she says, well, I'm going to try to prove it wrong. It's almost like the discussion we had before. If I don't like something, I'm going to try to poke holes in it. Right? That's what Twilight does in this episode. In a sense, she doesn't like it, she doesn't believe in it, so she looks to try to poke holes in it. Well, the problem is the empirical evidence before her is such that whenever the twitching happens, it happens. The empirical evidence seems to justify that there is some validity to this Pinky Sense, even if Twilight doesn't believe in it.
Yeah.
So the person who's and understand, magic is the physics of this world. Magic actually explains how things happen in this world, not in our world, but in that world, magic and physics are kind of the same thing. So, or very similar at least. There's a lot of intersection. So, I think the analogy, now this wasn't the intention, but the sort of the thinking was, it's a little bit more analogous to if you were in the area of Newtonian physics, and Twilight was a Newtonian physicist, and somebody comes along, hey, theory of relativity, and she's like, people tried to poke holes in Einstein's thing, right? They turned out to be wrong, but they tried until they said, okay, I don't understand this yet, but I'm going to go with it, right? So it's really more analogous to that when you really break it down. Now, that said, little did we know there was going to be this huge adult fandom who was going to be sensitive around religious issues for a lot of good reasons, but a lot of good reasons that have nothing to do with that episode, unless the fandom decides to make it about that. We were not making it about that. I can say that categorically and definitively. If it had occurred to us, we would have handled it in a more sensitive fashion, I think, in retrospect. But we didn't know that, we didn't see that bus coming.
Sometimes the way, I guess, all the audiences. But yeah, still really love the show as well, and all the different episodes. So thanks.
Sorry?
Thanks for answering the question. It's still love all the different cartoons and shows that you've done, like all the episodes. So it's still quite an enjoyable episode. Even with that, it makes it interesting. It's always great to watch.
All right, thank you.
Hi, your ideas about rebellion and fun are really interesting. And most kids shows, to be affirmative and uplifting, they stay very safe, and MLP is rebellious, but still uplifting. And I wondered why you thought, how that works, so how they pull that off. I wondered what you thought about that and how you try and do that.
Okay, I don't know why I'm having trouble hearing. I think maybe I'm just old. I don't know, I'm sorry. But you're talking about, there are nuances in your question I didn't quite catch. You're talking about rebelliousness and fun, and how sometimes things err in one direction and sometimes things err in another direction. Is that the gist of what you're saying?
Sorry, I talk really quickly. Most kids shows are very safe to try and be affirming. They're a bit too cutesy.
Right.
But My Little Pony is rebellious, but it's still affirmative.
Yes.
How do you think it pulls that off without getting cutesy and without getting boring? And how do you try and make that happen with your writing?
Well, I mean, that's, in a way, that's kind of the big umbrella question for my whole presentation / conversation here, is exactly what you're asking. And it's, I think, you know, just sort of hit some of the major themes that I think I think the sort of the attitude is, we're starting from the premise that these ponies are good friends. That's the premise. The premise is also that they are interveners in the world around them, trying to make a positive difference in the world around them, right? So the question is, I think how we go about it is not saying, this is how you be a good friend. Even though we come to discoveries about that, the storytelling isn't trying to teach something, I don't think. The storytelling is trying to explore ideas honestly. And then we come to a conclusion. We come to a discovery that can be construed as a lesson. But I don't think that we set out in the outset to try to teach a lesson. We set out from the outset saying, these are characters that we love, that love each other, that love the world around them. They're trying to make a positive difference. And you know what? That's not always easy. Right? And so we treat that as a real thing. We treat it as really that it's really not easy sometimes. And yet, they can figure it out, and they can come to something affirming in the end and bring an affirming attitude with them. In other words, and coming back to sort of what he was, you know, I don't know how we're doing on time, but this gets to a neat conclusion to our talk, that this idea of Camus was talking about rebellion meaning not erring too much not trying to be moral and drive morality down reality's throat, versus cynicism saying, hey, what's real is the world is a dark, terrible place, and that's what's real. That's also equally destructive. What we're trying to say is, trying to bring morality to the world involves real issues and real challenges, real for our magical world, but hopefully reflect the real challenges to a certain degree that we experience in our regular lives, and then coming to a conclusion at the end. I don't know if every show approaches things with that level of integrity. And that's been a pleasure. And I didn't invent that. That was here before I came to the show. That's credit to Lauren. That's a credit to Megan. It's continued to credit to so many people that I've had the pleasure to work with on this show. And hopefully I've absorbed some of it. So.
Thank you.
Sure. And sorry for the cursing. I apologize to anyone who was offended by that. It just came out of me.
Oh, goodness, it's me. Anyway, good sir. I was hoping to ask you about Spike, because he's basically completely different to the rest of the main cast. He's a baby male dragon, and the rest are all female, relatively mature ponies. and I was wondering how you approached including him in episodes or writing episodes specifically about him.
That's how. So Spike and including the question. I didn't understand the question part of it.
Okay, so when you write an episode, you normally have a mindset for writing it about cute, fluffy ponies. But then when you write about Spike, it's a little bit different. How do you tackle that?
Now, how your premise is that it's different? How is it? I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong, but tell me more about how it's different.
Well, there's a gender difference, there's an age difference, character-wise at least, and there's a racial difference. But also, just on a different note, I guess, a lot of the writers in general sometimes exaggerate these traits about Spike. Like they make him out to be particularly immature or unlucky and these other things. And I was wondering, in the Equestria Games in particular, you made Spike to be a very deep character. He had these very real, relatable issues. And I was wondering how you went about doing that, considering how different he is to the rest of the cast.
Got it. Okay, thank you for. I get it now. So, well, one thing is that there's in a sense it's really nothing different. I bring the same sort of process to Spike as I would to any of the characters. That said, what makes Spike different is that he is a different character. There are specific things that you can do with Spike. There are specific things you can't do with Spike because of who Spike is. But the process that I bring to it is the same. That said, you know, for Equestria Games specifically, what was really an opportunity, what really made that story attractive to us and to me in particular, was that Spike is, we had already established that Spike was, to a certain degree, a hero in the Crystal Kingdom, right? From beginning of season 3, right? So what if he was this huge hero and he didn't realize like this huge cult around Spike had formed since he'd last been there, which seemed justifiable, right? Yeah. But isn't it interesting with Spike in particular, how he would respond to that? And that because he sees himself as a servant to a certain degree, he actually takes pride in being a good servant. That's his role, and he does it well. Well, when you're a hero, that kind of doesn't fit the whole servant thing. So it became an interesting way to tell a story about how self-image impacts our ability to be effective and adaptive in the world. Spike, because of who he is and because of his canonical history, created this interesting opportunity to explore in the story. It was kind of irresistible. And so it's not like we treated Spike different. It was really more that what was specific about Spike helped create the opportunity to tell a story that seemed kind of cool to tell.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you very much.
Sure. God, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Right. I feel like I'm going to get like so
okay.
God has come to like say, it's your time. You're done.
Okay. My question is, it's just about what you said earlier on, about how some of the stuff is in the hands of the producers, or the executives rather. It's a two-parter, but I'll be brief. Firstly, what sort of categories of stuff, say in terms of, say, the course of the series over a few seasons or character development, especially on a large scale, that sort of thing, do the execs let you guys have the final say over? Could you give a couple of examples from season 3 or 4 if you've got time? And secondly, how much has that freedom or the process behind that changed since Lauren Faust left the team? Thanks for coming.
Okay, so the question is, are there decisions that are in our hands that are not in anybody else's hands?
Yeah.
As the creators, as creatives on the team?
Yeah.
Are there decisions that we get to make that no one else above us has any say in? Is that number one? And number two is?
How much has changed since...
since Lauren Faust left? Yeah. The answer is there's absolutely not a word that we write that doesn't get vetted by someone at Hasbro or the Hub. Not a word. That doesn't mean that we don't have influence. You know, they're waiting for us to come up with ideas. They're waiting for us to come up, you know, they don't tell us They might say we want an idea about this thing or that thing, but they don't say what the idea has to be. So the answer is that we can't really do anything that's going to move forward without at least the tacit approval of Hasbro and the Hub. And they have the ability to intervene at any point, at any time, over anything. Now, that's normal. That's not because there's some Death Star. That's normal in our business. So, but we're sort of like, we're the ones who serve in tennis, right? So we have influence in terms of where we serve the ball and all that kind of stuff. That sets the stage for the volley that follows. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Now, and the answer is that hasn't changed since Lauren was involved. Now, I don't think anybody, even including Lauren, has ever had a chance to sort of get the Hasbro or the Hub to do anything that they weren't willing to at least go along with. We just simply do not have that leverage at any point.
Oh, so if you were to age the CMCs up, if you want to do that, you'd be allowed to pitch the idea to the Hasbro executives.
Right, that's our job, is to sort of come up with ideas to pitch them, and then they evaluate. And they either say, sure, that can go through, or you shall not pass.
I was wondering if you could pitch the idea of having the side characters or the background characters be a little bit more interactive with the main six, so it would feel like the other background characters has more of a role into the show itself, rather than just being helpless or have to wait until they get help from main six. Because what I want to see is more characters actually being powerful enough to do things on their own without being someone who always needs help.
Sure, that's possible. I mean, you know, that you'll see that in episodes we're creating a lot of episodes, there'll be new characters created, whether those get pulled from the background ponies or whether some new design is created. That's actually, in a way, not my decision as a writer. My decision as a writer might be, we need a new character here, whether I might propose we use a background pony, or I might not, or the animators might say, hey, why don't we use a background pony for that character? They use that design. That's kind of how it works. So it kind of may or may not happen depending on the storytelling requirements. One thing that's probably not going to happen is say, wow, the fandom really loves that pony. Let's make a story about that pony. It's not going to work that way. That's not how the conversation will start. It doesn't mean that pony might not work its way into an episode, but it would really be more as a side effect of the storytelling we want to tell. I doubt, it's like we want a character who's like this. Oh, maybe we could use that background pony for that. That could always happen.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Well, I would like to share a little of my opinion on the rebellion/Funfunfun thing, because I first didn't really knew why I liked the show, but then I met some other bronies and started thinking about it, and then I realized that it is rebellious, and I can relate to the rebellious things, and because I can relate to the things, it's fun for me to watch the episodes. So
That's beautiful. I love to hear that.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Hello, Dave.
Hi.
My question concerns the interaction between Luna and the Cute Mark Crusaders. We've seen in previous episodes where she's intertwined with Scootaloo and Sweetbelle over certain personal problems. Will it be in the future that we'll see an episode with Apple Bloom and her trouble with a family or something?
Maybe. That's all I have to say.
Well, thank you for coming anyway.
Sure. I think we have the queue is done. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. This has been a treat.
All right, give it up for Dave Polsky.